Well, hello. This is another edition of the Marc Medley Show. We haven't been with you in a while. It is May 30th, Memorial Day. And we've been celebrating Memorial Day as well as birthdays with various cookouts. Didn't know if the weather was going to hold up because there was a tropical storm in the area, Tropical Storm Bonnie. But the weather did hold up. We had a wonderful day outside, wonderful day for barbecuing. The title of this particular episode is The Seinfeld Show was a show about nothing, and the Marc Medley Show is about anything and everything. And I say that because I will throw out during this time together a topic on just about anything. Whatever comes to mind as I'm on the air, that's what I'll talk about. And the show is not affiliated with anything else I do outside of here. So any of the commentary that I make is my own. That's my disclaimer that I'm putting that the views and opinions here are solely those of myself. Solely those of Marc A. Medley. So pretty much what we'll talk about is what's going on in current events as well as any other observations that I make or have made, shall I say. And the first observation that I make that I'll start the show out with is there is no way in the world I would trade my childhood for the kids growing up now or the kids even growing up in this past generation. And I'll tell you why. I was born in 1962. Yes, I am dating myself. I was a child growing up in the 60s as well as in the 70s. And you can even say some part of the 80s. And this I will say, I had a fantastic childhood. And when I say that, I mean it was not a childhood that was born out of fear. In other words, we had no fear of being able to go outside and play. I can remember as a child, as 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds going outside of the house across the street playing baseball and football in the sand lot. It was a sand lot filled with gravel and broken glass and dirt. Actually, it had been a railroad track, like a subway, that had been filled in. And that was filled in, and that became our baseball and football field. In fact, we named it Rocky Stadium. And on any given day, you could come down Pearl Street, and you could see a whole bunch of kids out playing football or baseball. If they wasn't in Rocky Stadium, they would be running up and down the street, either playing tag or red light, green light, or hot peas and butter, or hide and go seek, or any other games that a kid would play. And then if we wasn't playing on the block, we had no problem with walking a few blocks away from the house. The only restriction that we had was whenever the street lights came on, we would now have to make sure we were back in front of the house. In other words, we didn't want to be too far away when dark came. But other than that, we didn't have a whole lot of restrictions. I had one, which my mother and father was staunch on. There was a local high school a couple of blocks over, and they would say, do not go play in that high school parking lot or cut through that high school area, because they knew there was the potential of danger in that parking lot or around that high school. But short of that, we were allowed to pretty much go where we wanted to go. And then we would return home. The same would hold true if we were out riding our bicycles. There really was no holds bars in terms of where we could or could not go when we were on the bicycle. I mean, literally, we would go to neighboring communities, Clifton, Fairlawn, Hawthorne, you name it. We would ride through those communities and make our way back to our home city. And my point is, there was no fear for our parents, for the most part, to let us go. And we were not fearful when we were going. Unlike many of the children today, or even the teens today, who can't really even go out to a party without the fear of being shot. Because again, during that time in the 60s and the 70s and in the 80s, if I were to go out to a club, being killed was the last thing on my mind. Yet, in 2016, if there is a child or a teenager or an adult for that matter who was not invited to the party, it's a good chance he or she may come back to that party and shoot it up. That everyone at that party stood the chance of being killed just for being there, and because that person was not invited. Those kind of things just were not going on in the 70s, late 70s when I was a teen, early 80s when I was in my 20s, mid 70s whenever I was 12 and 13 and 14. Those things were not going on. And I'm saying all this to say because even when I raised my own kids, because my oldest will be 27 in August, the second one after her will be 22 in October. And there are two more. One will be 21 in August and another one just turned 15 earlier this month. And for the most part, those kids were not allowed to go anywhere without the supervision of their parents. When my girls were little, I didn't even allow them to go in the backyard unless I was sitting out there watching them. That's how much the times had changed from the time that I was a child to the time that I had children. From the time when I was a child that can pretty much go where I wanted to and was safe, to the time where I had children, would not let them off the front porch. It was almost as if they were in a prison. And the reason I'm bringing this up in this particular broadcast is because yesterday I texted my wife and said, there's a carnival going on a block away in the local park. And her text back to me was, that's all right, let them stay home, they're okay. And I thought, my God, how I would hate to be a child at this time. It's almost like being in prison. No, kids don't even know how to play. As an administrator in an elementary school, I see kids every day who don't know how to play. In their mind, playing is hitting. Playing is fighting. In their mind, that's what playing is. They have no concept of how to play. They have no concept of just tag. No concept of red light, green light. No concept of jumping double dutch. They have no concept of those games. But at the same time, many of them have been sheltered. And if they haven't been sheltered, the only thing they've seen is violence on television. Yes, I would not trade my time of being a youngster with the time of being a youngster right now. Even for that matter, as I said, I have one child who was born in 1989. She had a childhood nowhere close to mine. Another one born in 1994. She had a childhood nowhere close to mine. The other two were born in subsequent years. Their childhoods were nowhere close to mine. And I think back and I remember of the good times I had with the guys I grew up with, and the girls for that matter. The ones I grew up with. And oh, what fun we had. What fun we had playing baseball and football against the neighboring blocks. Against the children who grew up a block over. We had a competition. We were the Pearl Street Pumas. And we played in Rocky Stadium. And oh, what a wonderful time that was. I posted something the other day on social media that says, you don't know how good the good times are until they're gone. Until you look back on them 10, 15, 20 years later. That's when you realize just how good the good times were. The good times are not good while you are in them, or at least you don't realize it. But the further in that you go, the more years that go by, and then you have the opportunity to look back, then you realize just how good the good times were. All right, moving on to another subject. I told you this was a show about anything and everything. Been following this crazy political race. And when I say crazy, I mean crazy because the pickings are slim on both sides. The pickings are slim on both the Democratic side as well as the Republican side. It just seems like Donald Trump is getting nutty and nutter every day, nuttier and nuttier. Even though he is now the presumptive nominee, he's gotten his 1237. He's still out there making all these crazy remarks and tweets. And the question I have is, if by chance Donald Trump is elected president of the United States, is Twitter the way he's going to communicate with the other world leaders? Will he be communicating with Kim Jong-il through Twitter? Will he be communicating with Putin through Twitter? And if he doesn't get his way, is he going to be calling the world leaders names? It's going to be a speech full of put downs because he didn't get his way, because things are not going to work the way that he thinks things work in politics. Maybe, and that's a slim maybe, that some of these tactics that he's used worked in business. And I doubt very seriously, having been a business administration major and served in corporate America for 15 years, I doubt very seriously if those tactics even worked for him in business. But certainly, they're not going to work for him as leader of the free world. I have a brother-in-law who's from Jamaica. And he was visiting and he said to me, what I'm looking at here is worse than any third world country. And I couldn't do anything but laugh and agree as we sit here and watch this silliness of people who are looking to be the leader of the free world. You have Donald Trump calling folks Pocahontas, calling folks goofy, calling folks crooked and little and lying, and he thinks this is all a big game by branding, quote unquote, these people, not realizing just how silly he's making himself look. And anytime he's pressed for any substance, he can't give it. What he falls back on is name calling. What he falls back on is insults. What he falls back on is going into some gutter snipe fallback that he goes into regardless of. And then once now the people turn around and claim that they're on his side, oh, he loves them then. He and Megyn Kelly had a truce or a make-up interview. And I guess now they get along. Ben Carson, he went off on Ben back in November of 2015. And now all of a sudden Ben Carson is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And all the rest of them, Chris Christie, and everybody else that he's now, that was once an adversary, that all of a sudden turned and said they now love him. He loves all of them. Like I said, this is a poor choice that the United States of America or the American people have. It really is slim to none. Even with Hillary Clinton, because she has her baggage as well. Bernie Sanders, he's coming out with proposals that there's no way it's going to work. He is not going to be able to get free college for everyone. I don't care what he tries to put in place. That is not happening. He is not going to overtake Wall Street. Unfortunately, Wall Street will take care of him first. That's just not happening. So our choices here in the United States of America really is slim pickings. The level of violence that we have here in the country is escalating more and more. And I actually went out the other night to the gun range. I actually had a chance to go out and do some target practice. I went to the shooting range. Shot a few rounds, shot about 20 of them at a target. And I can kind of see where the gun owners are coming from to a degree. To a degree. But I'm still not sold on a lot of these policies that they have. But I can see where they're coming from. But the level of violence is constantly escalating, going back full circle to where I started in terms of coming up a child in this environment, coming up a teenager in this environment, not even being able to go out to a party. Again, going back to my childhood, I can remember going to clubs in Newark, such as Zanzibar, to Club 88, to the Peppermint Lounge, and nobody was really worried about getting shot. And yet nowadays, every time you look on the news or you turn on the web, someone has gotten shot or killed. I turned on the web yesterday. It was a basketball player from New Orleans, from the New Orleans Pelicans. Weird story where he walks into the wrong condo or the wrong apartment, looking for his so-called or alleged girlfriend or his baby mama, quote unquote. Walks into the wrong apartment, and in Texas, they can carry legally. Startled the man in the apartment or in the housing complex, and the man came back loaded, fired, didn't miss. Life gone. 23, 24-year-old, whatever he is, future, just signed a $2 million contract, gone. Gun violence. As we were leaving the range the other night, I was teasing the guy, saying, this is why I don't keep a gun in the house. Because too much emotion is involved. That's too easy once you get angry to reach for. that gives you confidence that you might not have if you didn't have it. That's why folks are getting into arguments and squabbles out in the street, and they're coming back home to get their peace, because it gives them a confidence that they might not have had they not had that. That's why, for the most part, I'm against guns in the home, because emotions could run high, and when they do, that's something to reach for. I told you this was a show about anything and everything. In any event, I hope everyone has had a wonderful Memorial Day. There's a difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Memorial Day is when we remember those who died in service. Veterans Day is when we acknowledge any of us who has served in the armed forces, of which I am one. I served 9 years as a part of the New Jersey Air National Guard as a jet engine mechanic. Part of the Air Force. Did my training with the Air Force and did 9 years with the Air National Guard, the 108th TAC Fighter Wing. And then we changed over to the 108th Air Refueling Wing out of McGuire Air Force Base. So I am considered a veteran, but today is not Veterans Day. Today is the day that we honor those who lost their lives for freedom, to keep us free, regardless of how silly or frivolous the war they were fighting they may have been. They gave their lives in order for us to remain free, because I know one thing we learned in the military was freedom is not free. So I'll tell you what, everyone have a great Memorial Day, and give some thought to what you heard in this episode. But again, as I started, I would not trade my childhood for anyone who's having their childhood right now, with all the technology they may have, with all the accoutrements they have, with all the different things that they may have that we did not have in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I would not trade it for any of it. Have a great rest of your Memorial Day.